The sky above the planet Zerath was a storm of red and violet clouds, swirling violently as if the very air carried anger. Lightning streaked across the horizon, illuminating jagged mountain peaks that pierced the heavy mist. The humans' landing craft, small and nimble, sliced through the turbulent atmosphere with a faint hum, its metal hull reflecting the eerie light. Lieutenant Mara gripped the controls with steady hands, her eyes scanning the storm for any signs of danger. They had been sent to this distant world to observe, not to fight, but Zerath was known for its unpredictable weather and even more unpredictable inhabitants. Beside her, Corporal Rain adjusted his visor and muttered, "Feels like the planet itself doesn't want us here." Mara didn't answer. Her attention was fully on the landing zone ahead. It wasn't the weather she feared, it was the stories they had been told about the Zerathi. Insectoid, fierce, and territorial, the Zerathi considered humans weak and unworthy. Mara had seen their own kind fight and die at alien hands before, but she had never let fear control her. Fear was a choice, courage was a habit. As the craft descended, the jagged outline of a forest became visible, its trees tall and sharp, with leaves like blades of green crystal. Mara exhaled slowly, easing the ship to the ground. The engines hummed as it touched down, kicking up mist and debris. The hatch opened, and Mara led the team into the forest, their boots sinking into soft moss that glowed faintly under the storm's light. They had only been a few minutes in the woods when the first alarm sounded, a shrill clicking that echoed through the trees. Mara froze for a heartbeat, instinctively raising her hand to signal a stop. From the shadows, a group of Zerathi warriors emerged, their carapaces glinting like polished obsidian. Their multiple eyes, black and reflective, focused on the humans. The warriors hissed in a language Mara couldn't understand, but the threat was clear. These were protectors of their land, ready to strike at the intruders. "Hold your ground," Mara whispered to her team. "Do not provoke them, but be ready." It stumbled, letting out a pained chirp. The warriors froze momentarily, their attention split between the humans and their fallen kin. Mara didn't hesitate. She ran toward the youngling, ignoring the danger. "I've got you," she called, her voice calm but firm. She scooped the small alien into her arms, careful not to hurt it further. Its tiny claws dug into her jacket, and its multiple eyes blinked up at her in confusion and fear. The Zerathi warriors hissed, moving forward, but something in their behavior changed when they saw Mara cradling the youngling. The queen's daughter, the youngling, Mara realized, was being treated with care. In the hive-like structure of Zerathi society, weakness was met with disdain. To see a human handle one of their own with gentleness was almost unthinkable. A loud roar cut through the air, a sound so powerful it shook the branches of the crystalline trees. From above, descending like a shadow made of living armor, came the queen herself. Her wings shimmered like dark metal, her body larger and more imposing than any of her guards. Her multiple eyes glinted with fury and confusion. She landed gracefully but heavily, her presence radiating authority. Mara stood her ground, her heart racing but her mind clear. She looked at the queen and spoke softly, "I'm not here to hurt her. I just want to help." In all her years, she had never seen a human act with such fearless compassion. The youngling wriggled slightly, letting out a small, frightened noise, and Mara adjusted her hold to comfort it. The queen's antennae twitched as she studied the human who dared to approach her child. "You, hold her without fear," the queen finally hissed, her voice a strange mix of curiosity and incredulity. "Why?" For the first time, she saw a human not as prey or intruders, but as something different, something remarkable. The youngling whimpered softly, pressing closer to Mara. Mara whispered reassurances in a quiet, melodic tone. She didn't understand the Zerathi language, but the softness in her voice seemed to transcend species. Slowly, the youngling's breathing steadied. The queen's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in observation. She could not understand how a human so small and fragile could inspire such calm and confidence. Rain, seeing the tension, slowly moved to Mara's side, hands raised in peace. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "we should be careful. They could attack any second." "Watch the queen." Finally, the queen stepped closer, her mandibles clicking softly. She studied Mara's face, the determination in her eyes, and then the tender way she held the youngling. Something shifted. The queen's body language softened, a subtle loosening of tension that no human could have anticipated. "You, do not harm her," the queen said, more as a statement than a question. "I will not," Mara replied. "I will help her." Their queen, normally decisive and strict, was standing still, frozen by disbelief and wonder. They had never seen such behavior from a human, such courage, such calm in the face of a predator. Mara's team moved carefully, giving her space, but ready for any sudden attack. Rain glanced at Mara and nodded slightly, silently expressing his amazement. She had done what no one else had thought possible. She had stopped a queen in her tracks, simply by showing compassion. The storm above seemed to pause as if the planet itself sensed the moment. Lightning flickered silently, illuminating the strange, jagged forest in bursts of silver. Mara felt the youngling shift in her arms, sensing the queen's continued hesitation. She whispered softly, "It's okay, I've got you." The act of non-aggression paired with the human's bravery was an insult to Zarathi tradition, yet it also planted a seed of something new, a possibility of understanding. Minutes passed like hours. Neither side moved, neither side struck. Mara continued to hold the youngling, keeping it calm and warm. She could feel the queen's eyes on her, heavy and intense, yet strangely respectful. The youngling nuzzled Mara's shoulder, and the queen's massive head tilted slightly, studying this act of trust. Finally, the queen spoke again, her voice lower and more measured. "Human, you defy my expectations. Most of your kind would flee, scream, or fight. You hold her without fear. Why?" "Because she is hurt, because I can help, and because, maybe you will understand one day, that humans are more than you think." It was a feeling she could not name, but it filled her with a sense of awe and fear of what it might mean. In that moment, Mara had not only saved a life, she had challenged the very beliefs of an entire species. The youngling, still safe in her arms, had become the bridge between two worlds. And the queen, frozen in disbelief, had taken the first step toward reconsidering everything she thought she knew about humans. The forest remained tense and quiet, the storm raging above, yet for Mara, the moment felt almost serene. She had survived battles before, but this was different. This was not a fight of weapons or strategy. It was a test of courage, compassion, and understanding. And for the first time, Mara realized that the smallest act of care could be more powerful than an army. And so, standing in the misty forest of Zarath, holding the wounded youngling with unwavering determination, Mara set the first stone of an unlikely story. A story where humans would be seen not as intruders, but as allies. A story that would change the course of the Zarathi forever. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath. The queen's massive form remained still, her many legs planted firmly on the mossy ground, while Mara cradled the youngling in her arms. The storm above had softened to a steady drizzle, letting the eerie red light filter through the crystal leaves. The Zarathi warriors circled cautiously, keeping their distance, their antennae twitching nervously as if they themselves could not believe their queen's hesitation. Mara took a slow, deep breath. She could feel the weight of the queen's gaze, heavy and expectant, but she did not flinch. Every instinct screamed caution, yet she knew that fear would only make the situation worse. The youngling whimpered softly, pressing its head closer to her chest, and Mara adjusted her hold, whispering gentle words she hoped would soothe it. Words might not translate across species, but kindness often did. The queen's mandibles clicked lightly, a sound that seemed to resonate with authority and curiosity. Mara tilted her head slightly, letting the queen see that she was calm, that she was not a threat. "I won't hurt her," she said quietly. "I only want to help. She needs care, and I will not let go." Then the queen spoke, her voice lower this time, almost a growl. "You defy every expectation I have of your species. You hold her with tenderness. You do not fear me. Why? Even if that someone is a human." For a moment, it was as if the storm had paused entirely, leaving only the three of them in a bubble of tense silence. "You speak words that carry no threat," the queen said finally. "Yet your actions are incomprehensible. But I know one thing. If a life can be saved, it should be." Mara's courage, her refusal to abandon or harm the youngling, challenged everything the queen had ever believed. From the shadows, the other warriors murmured among themselves. Some whispered warnings, some expressed confusion. The queen did not move or respond to them. Her full attention remained on Mara and the child she held. It was rare for a Zarathi to pause so completely, to allow uncertainty to rule over instinct. And yet here she stood, frozen in disbelief, watching a human protect one of her own. The youngling stirred in Mara's arms, letting out a small, hesitant chirp. It seemed to sense the queen's hesitation and Mara's calm, and it pressed closer to Mara, almost in gratitude. Mara smiled softly, stroking its small head. "You're safe now," she whispered. "I've got you." Never had one shown compassion so fearlessly. Rain, Mara's second-in-command, took a cautious step forward. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "we can't hold this standoff forever. If she decides we are threats, she could. Let her choose the next move. More than that, she might change the Queen's perception of their species entirely." Minutes passed slowly. The youngling's breathing began to even out, its trembling subsiding under Mara's gentle care. The Queen remained still, her gaze fixed, her body language a mixture of caution and curiosity. The Zarathi warriors, sensing their Queen's indecision, hesitated as well. It was unusual for them to wait without acting, and yet the presence of the human holding the child seemed to command the pause. "You are unlike the others," the Queen said finally, her voice softer now. "Most of your kind would fight, flee, or surrender. You hold her without fear. Why?" "Even if it's a small life, even if it's not human, I won't abandon her. I won't hurt her. And I hope you can see that humans can be more than you think." And yet here was a human, small and fragile by Zarathi standards, protecting one of her own with such courage and clarity of purpose that the old rules seemed meaningless. From the edge of the clearing, a subtle movement caught Mara's eye. She glanced sideways and saw some of the warriors shifting uneasily, their instincts warring with the strange scene before them. It was clear they did not understand, could not reconcile their training with the display of human compassion. Mara let out a slow breath, feeling a small surge of hope. They might survive this encounter, not through weapons or strategy, but through empathy and bravery. The youngling made a soft chirp, turning its head toward the Queen. It seemed to recognize her, and yet it did not retreat from Mara. Mara held it closer, whispering words of reassurance. "It's okay, you're safe, I promise." Humans were not mindless prey. They were capable of understanding, capable of courage, capable of care. And in that moment she felt a strange stir of respect. "You risk yourself for her," the Queen said finally. "Why, you could leave, escape, survive, yet you stay. And because I hope, one day you might see humans not as enemies, but as something more." Her instinct screamed to act, to reclaim her child, to assert dominance. But a deeper, unfamiliar part of her hesitated. She could not strike a human who held her daughter with such care, who risked everything for another life. Mara adjusted her hold on the youngling, feeling it relax slightly against her chest. She whispered softly, "You're safe." "I've got you." Rain, noticing the Queen's hesitation, lowered his weapon slightly, understanding Mara's decision. The humans could not attack, could not flee. They could only wait and hope that the Queen's curiosity outweighed her instinct to dominate. And so they stood there in the misty forest of Zarath, caught between fear and hope, each side holding its breath as the tension stretched on. Finally, the Queen spoke again, her voice calmer, measured. "You hold her without fear. You act with courage. Perhaps you are different." For the first time, she realized that survival alone was not the only measure of strength. Compassion, courage, and the ability to act rightly, even when threatened, were qualities that mattered just as much. And in that realization, a new possibility began to take root, an alliance, fragile but real, between human and Zarathi. The forest remained quiet, the storm above continuing its gentle drizzle. Mara felt the youngling stir, and she whispered, "You're safe. We'll take care of you." The Queen watched silently, her massive body still and imposing, yet no longer threatening. She had been frozen by disbelief once, but now she was thinking, considering, questioning the assumptions she had held for centuries. And in that moment, the smallest act of human compassion had begun to bridge a gap between two species, opening a path toward understanding that neither side could have imagined. The Queen's hive loomed ahead, a massive structure of living walls and glistening tunnels, like a city grown rather than built. It stretched high into the crimson sky, its surface shifting subtly as though breathing, alive in every sense. The Zarathi warriors had led Mara and her team cautiously inside, while the Queen followed silently, her gaze constantly on the human holding her daughter. The youngling nestled in Mara's arms, its small body trembling less with every step, soothed by the warmth and calm emanating from the human. The hive was unlike any place Mara had seen before. The walls pulsed faintly, glowing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to reflect the heartbeat of the entire structure. The air was warm, humid, and rich with an almost metallic scent. Every sound, the clicking of the warrior's claws, the hum of the hive, the soft drip of condensation, echoed strangely, creating an atmosphere both alien and alive. Mara felt her skin prickle with awe, but she forced herself to focus. The youngling's life was her responsibility now, and the Queen's reaction would determine the human's survival here. The Queen led them to a chamber deep within the hive. It was larger than any building on Earth, high and domed, with translucent walls that allowed the red storm outside to filter in, casting shifting shadows across the floor. In the center, the Queen's daughter was placed gently on a bioluminescent platform designed for care and recovery. The youngling's legs and wings were weak from the earlier injury, but the human's careful handling had prevented further damage. The Queen remained silent, hovering above the youngling with her wings folded neatly against her body. Mara stepped back slightly, keeping her hands close to the child but allowing the Queen's space. The tension was thick, every movement was watched, every breath measured. "You heal her," the Queen said finally, her voice softer than before. "Without asking, without fear. Why? You would do the same for someone you loved." "You are unlike the others," she said. "Most would not touch her, would not risk themselves." The youngling stirred slightly, pressing its head against Mara's chest as if acknowledging her words. The Queen's eyes softened for just a moment, a movement so subtle it could almost be missed. But in that small gesture, Mara sensed a shift. The Queen was beginning to see that humans were not merely fragile creatures or weak intruders. They could be brave, compassionate, and capable of acts that inspired respect. Mara knelt beside the youngling, examining its injuries carefully. "Your wings are weak," she said softly. "We need to keep them still for now, or they could be damaged further." She adjusted the child gently, careful not to cause pain. The youngling chirped softly, a sound of both trust and relief. The Queen moved closer, her massive eyes never leaving Mara. "Why do you care?" she asked. "You do not owe her life, you could leave. You could survive without risking yourself." Compassion was often considered a weakness, and humans had never been seen as capable of more than fear and destruction. Yet here was a human, standing calmly, speaking with quiet authority and acting with care. It was impossible to ignore. From the edges of the chamber, Mara's team watched silently. Rain whispered, "Lieutenant, she's not attacking, she's studying you. Keep your weapons ready, but don't make a move. Let her learn." "You understand her needs," the Queen said finally, "more than any of my own." She had never encountered a being so small and seemingly fragile who could wield courage like this. The youngling stirred again, lifting its head slightly. It chirped, a sound that seemed to echo softly in the chamber. Mara adjusted her hold, whispering words the youngling could not understand, but it responded to the tone, pressing closer. The Queen watched, silent, her multiple eyes reflecting surprise and something almost like admiration. "You do not fear me," the Queen said, "and yet you hold her without hesitation." She had taught her younglings that weakness must be eliminated and that survival was the only law, and yet this human challenged all of that with a single act of care. "You risk your life for her," the Queen said finally. "That is unusual." She had never considered that courage and compassion could be intertwined so completely. Her own kind often saw compassion as weakness, and yet here it was, embodied in a human. Minutes passed, stretching into an unspoken conversation. Mara continued to tend to the youngling, checking its wings, stroking its head gently, and speaking softly. The Queen hovered nearby, observing, learning. Each act of care, each calm word, challenged the beliefs she had held for centuries. Finally, the Queen spoke again, her voice quieter, almost reflective. "You are different. You show strength in ways I cannot understand fully. Sometimes it takes a different perspective to see what is truly important. That's all anyone can give." "I think she's reconsidering." In that trust, she saw something she had never expected, a bridge between their species. "You protect her without demand," the Queen said finally, "without threat, without hesitation. Perhaps they are capable of more than we have believed." She hovered over the youngling for a long moment, then slowly withdrew slightly, giving Mara space. It was the smallest concession, but it was significant. It was the first sign that trust could exist between human and queen. The youngling chirped softly again, lifting its head to look at Mara. Mara smiled, brushing its small head gently. "See, you're safe. And soon you'll be strong again." And she was beginning to understand that strength was not always shown through dominance or fear. It could be shown through care, courage, and the protection of those who could not defend themselves. In that chamber, deep within the hive, a fragile understanding began to take root. Mara had not only saved a life, she had challenged the Queen's beliefs, opened a door to cooperation, and demonstrated the human spirit in its purest form. And the Queen, watching, learning, and reconsidering, took the first step toward a future neither species could have predicted. The calm inside the hive lasted only briefly. From the distant tunnels, a low rumble echoed, growing louder with each passing second. Mara's sharp ears caught it before anyone else did. She turned her head toward the queen, who had been hovering silently, watching the youngling. The queen's antennae twitched and she stiffened slightly. "They are coming," the queen hissed, her voice low but firm. "A rival faction, they intend to take my hive, and they will destroy anything in their path. We stay and help. We protect the youngling and the queen. We show them that humans are not weak." She had not expected this. Humans rarely stayed when danger approached. They fled or hid. But Mara's unwavering courage had already shaken her perception of them. Now, by choosing to defend the hive, humans were proving their worth not in words, but in action. The rumble grew louder, echoing through the tunnels like the beating of a massive drum. Mara and her team moved into position beside the queen and her warriors. The humans' weapons were small compared to the massive claws and bioenergy weapons of the Zarathi, but Mara knew that size and strength were not everything. Strategy, speed, and quick thinking could turn the tide. The first wave of attackers arrived. From the deep tunnels came a swarm of rival Zarathi warriors, their dark carapaces glinting in the dim light, their claws clicking in unison. They moved with precision, trained to overwhelm, to crush, and to conquer. Mara gritted her teeth. The humans were outnumbered, but they had a chance. The queen's warriors formed a line, their mandibles raised, wings twitching in readiness. Mara adjusted her grip on the youngling, keeping it safe behind a protective barrier created by the warriors. "Stay behind me," she said to her team. "Watch for openings. We will not charge blindly. We will think and we will act." Mara fired precise shots, disabling key attackers without wasting energy on unnecessary risk. Rain flanked a group of advancing Zarathi, using clever maneuvers to confuse and slow them down. The humans' agility and unpredictability began to complement the queen's warriors' brute strength. The queen hovered above the youngling, her wings shimmering as she prepared to strike. Yet she did not attack recklessly. She observed, calculated, and coordinated. Mara noticed the subtle movements, signals, gestures, a language of action that even humans could interpret. She adjusted her position accordingly, moving in sync with the queen's commands without a word. Minutes passed like hours. The hive shook with the clash of claws and weapons. The rival Zarathi were fierce, but they had not anticipated the human's strategy. Mara's team used traps, misdirection, and careful timing to create openings for the queen's warriors. They were small, fragile, and fast, qualities the enemy did not expect. The queen watched closely, her massive eyes reflecting surprise and growing respect. One of the rival warriors broke through a weak point in the line, advancing toward the chamber where the youngling rested. Mara acted instantly. She threw herself between the attacker and the child, firing with perfect aim. The warrior faltered, stunned by the human's courage and precision. In that moment, the queen's instincts to strike were replaced with admiration. The human had risked herself to protect what mattered most, proving that bravery was not the exclusive domain of the Zarathi. The battle continued, ebbing and flowing like the tide. Mara and her team coordinated with the queen's warriors, their combined forces turning the enemy's numbers against them. Every move was calculated, every step measured. The rival Zarathi had not faced humans who could think, improvise, and act with both courage and care. It was a lesson that was not lost on the queen. At one point, a massive attacker lunged directly at Mara. She rolled aside just in time, grabbing a loose piece of debris and hurling it with all her strength. It struck the enemy, throwing it off balance. She did not pause. She pressed forward, using every ounce of her skill and instinct to protect the youngling. The queen hovered above, observing, silently acknowledging the human's capability. The youngling watched, chirping softly, sensing the safety provided by the combined effort of human and Zarathi. Mara's heart pounded, but she remained steady. Fear was present, yes, but it did not control her. Every action she took was deliberate, guided by the principle that life mattered more than personal safety. Finally, the tide began to turn. The rival Zarathi, confused by the human's strategy and frustrated by their unexpected resilience, began to retreat. Mara and the queen's warriors pressed carefully, forcing the attackers back into the tunnels from which they had come. Mara moved with precision, ensuring no one in her team or the youngling's safety zone was harmed. When the last enemy retreated, the hive was silent except for the heavy breathing of the warriors and the soft hum of the living walls. Mara lowered her weapon, brushing the sweat from her brow. She glanced at the queen, who hovered above the youngling, her massive body still and imposing, yet her eyes now carried something different: respect. "You survive," the queen said finally, her voice quiet, tinged with awe. "Your species, you are capable of more than I imagined. Bravery isn't about strength or size. It's about what you do when it matters most." But she had witnessed humans, small and fragile, act with courage, skill, and precision that rivaled her most trained warriors. They had risked themselves not for glory, but for life, and in doing so had challenged her entire perspective. The youngling chirped softly, lifting its head to look at Mara. Mara smiled, stroking its small head. "See, we did it. You're safe." The truth of them resonated deeply, shaking centuries of learned behavior and expectation. She had ruled with precision, discipline, and fear, yet here was a human showing that courage and care could alter outcomes more than any weapon. "You have earned consideration," the queen said finally. "Your species, perhaps we misjudged them. If we are trusted, we will prove our value, not through domination, but through courage, strategy, and care." That was something her species had rarely seen, and it challenged everything she had believed. The youngling stirred again, pressing closer to Mara. She whispered softly, "You're safe. You're going to be okay." The queen hovered silently, allowing the human to continue her care, no longer seeing her as a threat, but as an ally. The hive remained alert, warriors patrolling the corridors and listening for any sign of returning enemies. Mara and her team worked alongside them, sharing tactics, observations, and strategies. The humans' understanding of improvisation and adaptability complemented the Zarathi's raw power, creating a force stronger than either could achieve alone. The queen watched, silent but attentive, as humans demonstrated not only their skill but their principles. Their bravery, their intelligence, and their care for life, even for those of a different species, was a revelation. Hours passed, and the storm outside began to subside, leaving the hive bathed in the faint red glow of the setting sun. The youngling rested, its small body finally calm and secure in Mara's care. The queen hovered nearby, considering the humans not as invaders or enemies, but as beings capable of courage, honor, and respect. "You have proven much," the queen said finally, her voice quiet but steady. "Perhaps your species deserves more than suspicion. A chance to show that humans can be more than fear and weakness. We can be partners, allies, friends." For the first time, she considered a future where humans were not merely tolerated, but respected. And in that moment, a fragile bridge between species was formed, one built on courage, care, and the understanding that true strength was not always measured in claws or weapons, but in choices, actions, and the heart. The storm outside had finally passed, leaving the sky above Zerath painted in pale reds and golds. The jagged crystal trees glistened in the fading light, droplets clinging to their sharp leaves like tiny prisms. Inside the hive, a calm settled over the chambers, though the air still thrummed with tension. Mara stood near the youngling, her hands gentle on its wings as it stretched cautiously, testing its strength. The child had regained mobility faster than anyone had expected, her small eyes blinking at the human with trust and recognition. The queen hovered nearby, massive wings folding neatly against her back. Her multiple eyes studied Mara intently, her expression unreadable yet thoughtful. She had spent hours observing humans, watching them act with courage and care during the battle, and she could not ignore what she had learned. These creatures, fragile in appearance, possessed a will and bravery that rivaled her own warriors. She had always ruled her hive with strength and fear, but now she faced a new truth. Strength could take many forms. Mara's team moved carefully through the chamber, helping reinforce the hive's defenses and repairing minor damage caused by the attack. Every action was deliberate, precise, and efficient. Mara glanced at Rain, who gave a subtle nod. They had proven themselves not only capable of defending themselves, but of contributing meaningfully to the hive's survival. The queen's gaze shifted to the youngling, then back to Mara. "You have risked your lives," she said finally, her voice calm but carrying weight. "For one of mine, for my child. Why? That is what makes humans human." Now they had demonstrated bravery, strategy, and a moral code that rivaled even her own sense of duty. "You are different from what I expected," she said. "Perhaps your kind is not weak." For the first time, she considered the possibility of an alliance between humans and Zarathi. It was unprecedented, a notion her hive had never entertained, yet the evidence was clear. Mara and her team had acted with intelligence, bravery, and compassion. They had earned a place of respect. The youngling stirred again, chirping softly as it tested its wings. Mara held it steady, whispering gentle words. The queen watched, noting the bond that had formed between human and alien. Trust had been established not through dominance, but through care. This simple act of connection was revolutionary in Zarathi culture. Hours passed, and the hive gradually returned to normal. Warriors resumed patrols, the living walls pulsed steadily, and the youngling's recovery progressed. Mara had spent much of the day observing the queen's responses, understanding the subtle cues of Zarathi behavior, and adapting to ensure that trust was maintained. She had learned more about the alien species than she had expected, about their instincts, their culture, and their capacity for change. By evening, the queen descended closer to the youngling, hovering gently as Mara placed the child on the bioluminescent platform. The child stretched fully, flapping its small wings experimentally, chirping softly. Mara smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment and relief. She had not only saved a life, but had also begun a process of understanding that could change the relationship between humans and Zarathi forever. "You have proven much," the queen said finally, her voice steady. "Your species may deserve more than suspicion. Perhaps we have been wrong in underestimating humans." She had spent centuries relying on strength, obedience, and fear to govern her hive. Humans had challenged every assumption she held, not through power but through action and principle. Mara had risked herself, fought bravely, and cared deeply. It was undeniable proof that humans were worthy of consideration, perhaps even of trust. Finally, the queen's massive form relaxed slightly. "Very well," she said. "Your actions have earned respect. You have shown that humans can act with courage, strategy, and honor. I will allow it, but know this, trust is fragile. It must be maintained." Mara bent down, brushing its small head gently. "See, you're strong now, you're safe. And we can prove it one step at a time." Mara spent much of her time observing, learning the nuances of Zarathi society, and demonstrating the humans' capability and honor through small acts of care and bravery. The queen watched quietly, fascinated by the humans' intelligence and adaptability. They were not merely survivors. They were thinkers, planners, and protectors. Every action they took reinforced the lesson she had learned during the battle. Courage and morality could be as powerful as raw strength. One evening, as the red light of the setting sun filtered through the hive walls, the queen approached Mara privately. Her massive body moved gracefully, and her eyes, usually cold and assessing, carried a subtle warmth. "Human, you have earned my trust," she said, "and the trust of my youngling. Perhaps a new era can begin between our species. But your actions have laid the foundation. You have proven what humans are capable of. You have changed my view, human, and that is remarkable." The queen observed silently, recognizing the bond that had formed between human and alien. It was a bond that transcended fear, species, and tradition. Trust had been established, and with it came the possibility of a future neither had dared imagine before. In the following weeks, Mara and her team became integrated into the hive's daily life. They helped train warriors in new strategies, improved the hive's defenses, and shared knowledge of human technology and tactics. The queen observed constantly, assessing the humans' contributions and learning from their adaptability. The hive had survived attacks before, but never with such unexpected allies. The youngling thrived, growing stronger and more confident, often chirping in excitement when Mara approached. The queen allowed Mara to handle the child without interference, a silent acknowledgement of trust. Each day, Mara's presence reinforced the lesson the queen had learned. Humans were more than weak intruders. They were capable of courage, care, and honor. One evening, the queen summoned Mara to the central chamber. The youngling was resting nearby, chirping softly in its sleep. The queen hovered, her massive wings folding gracefully. "Human," she said, "your actions have done more than protect my child. They have changed how I see your species. Humans may be worthy allies, perhaps even friends. We hope to earn that fully one day at a time, through action, not words." The queen's acknowledgement was not only a personal victory, but a victory for humanity. It proved that humans could be more than survivors. They could be protectors, allies, and agents of change. The youngling stirred, opening its eyes and chirping softly. Mara picked it up gently, holding it close. "See, we've made a difference already," she whispered. The child chirped happily, pressing its head to her chest, safe and strong. The queen hovered nearby, watching. Her massive body no longer carried the weight of distrust or fear, but instead reflected a new understanding. The human who had refused to let go of her daughter had earned her respect, and in doing so had shown her species the true strength of humanity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the hive in golden light, Mara stood beside the queen and the youngling. Together they looked out over the forests of Zerath, a world still scarred by conflict but filled with the promise of change. The humans had proven their worth not through domination or violence, but through courage, care, and moral strength. The Zerathi had learned that strength could take many forms, and the bond between the two species had been forged in the fires of trust and bravery. In that moment, Mara realized that this was only the beginning. The hive, the youngling, and the queen were safe, yes, but more importantly, the galaxy had begun to see the truth of humanity. And that truth was simple yet profound. Courage, empathy, and honor could change the course of worlds. The youngling chirped again, flapping its wings with growing confidence. Myra smiled, holding it close. The queen hovered beside them, her eyes calm and reflective. Humans and Zerathi had faced danger together, survived together, and in doing so had begun a partnership that could shape the future of both species. For the first time in centuries, the queen felt hope, not for herself alone, but for her child, for her people, and for the humans who had proven that bravery and care were forces to be respected, regardless of size, species, or appearance. And in the calm after the storm, as the stars began to pierce the crimson sky, a new era dawned, one of trust, alliance, and the undeniable power of the human spirit.